Well, another year has come to an end, and just like many years, just a little bit chips away at your faith in humanity and the people around you. And you feel that maybe for the oncoming, for the foreseeable future, maybe the thing to do is to just, bundle up, hunker down, find a way to support the ones you care about, and just don't pay too much attention of what's going on outside. Because what's inside are video games. And when you have video games to distract you, you don't need to look out the window and see what's happening, to see what's oncoming. It's not necessary, because you have the warming glow over the screen, and your make-believe friends are on it. Hi, there you are. And you can control what they do with the controller. It's so much better than real people. And that's why video games have such an important part in our lives. It may be a little bit too important, but let's not think about that right now. Let's not think about what happens with the world around us as we get older. Let's just think about what the next game is that we want to play. And the first part of thinking about that is thinking about the games that we enjoyed playing over this past year. That's a segue, probably, to top 10 video games of 2024. So, as usual, I'm going to be given a list. I'm going to be talking probably too much, rambling about video games that I played. Maybe you didn't play them. Maybe you should rectify that. As these are 10 pretty good video games to remember as we close out the year. And I feel like this has just been a really good year for not the video game business, but in terms of games coming out that were enjoyable. I feel like this was an extremely strong year for me. I always think it's weird when I see a lot of these end-of-year things that begin with, well, this year certainly wasn't as good as 2023, and I'm like, go to hell, or buy me Bone Storm. I don't need you to buy me Bone Storm. I bought my own Bone Storm. You can go to hell, though, because 2024 was an exceptionally good year for video games for me. And in fact, actually, there were a number of games that had to be left off the list because it's only 10 games. I was overflowing with games in a way that I haven't been in previous years. So, just because games are not on the list doesn't mean I didn't like them, but it just wasn't any room. Okay, what's the first game we're going to take a look at? Well, we're going to take a look not at number 10, but at number old, because for a few years now, I've been given Old Game of the Year. And the criteria for that is a game that came out sometime in the past, but this year was the first time I ever played it, and clearly it made a really strong impression on me. So what was number old for this year? Well, yeah, it's Firefighter FD18. But what else could it be, really? I didn't really know what to expect from Firefighter FD18. I was pretty optimistic about it, because this was a Konami game from a time when that actually meant something, and you can feel it. It's the gameplay is very solid, though very hard and very frustrating as these buildings are collapsing all around you, and it seems unfair, but it only seems that way on the surface. You can make your way through it. You can get through the most insane fire you have ever seen, as our main character, Dean, might be hallucinating them to be living demon fire. It's hard to tell if that is supposed to be real or not. But I feel like the gameplay in this was very solid, very different, because, hey, it's a firefighting game. That's not really a usual thing. I thought they did a really good job of this, of working out how to make a firefighting game. And also, just a real fun story and characters, and the fires themselves are characters, because we can't forget that they do scream when you kill them. Again, I don't know if that's supposed to be real or if Dean is imagining that. No one else in the game, none of his coworkers acknowledge the living demon fires, so he might just be hallucinating this. I had a good time playing through this, even though it was frustrating. And also, this game makes me smile. It's important to have things in your life that you can just think about when you're down that'll make you smile. And when I'm down, I like to think about how Dean McGregor wants to get revenge on fire. Just fire in general. He has to, because when he was younger, his sister disappeared in a fire, and he thinks she's still out there, which he never explains. He never explained. What does that mean, Dean? What does that mean that you think your sister is still out there? She didn't go missing, Dean. She was in the fire. But Dean has to get revenge on fire. He has to, and he will not accept any casualties, any more victims of fire. And so that's... Don't leave them behind. You know, Dean might not be mentally stable. He might not... Maybe he shouldn't be on the job, but he's just that damn good. He gets the job done. He has to, because if he lets a single person die, his boss will tell him over the radio how disappointed he is on it. He is, and then Dean will just jump in the fire and die himself. So he has to make sure there are no casualties. None. None are acceptable. So this was my favorite old game this year. It's actually kind of funny. It's also built seemingly for speedrunning. So if someone wanted to speedrun this, it's actually quite friendly towards that with its in-game timers and short missions. There's replayability, replay value, and a story that makes me think, hey, if Neil Breen made a video game, this is basically it. It's Firefighter FD18 for the PlayStation 2.
Why?
Firefighter FD18 for old game. But that's an old game, and not part of the top 10. So criteria for top 10 are basically new games that I played this year, not necessarily coming out this year, because I don't necessarily always have time, though I did, actually, when it come to think about it, just about, I think everything, either all the games came out this year, or maybe they had a mode that came out this year, I believe, is what populates, is what this top 10 list is impregnated with. So why don't we get on to number 10 to find out what the first game of the actual list is. Number 10 for 2024.
There's something in the basement. I've seen it. It's huge, almost as big as my dog. It doesn't hiss or growl or anything, but I haven't gotten close enough to it to find out what it is, since it's always just lurking out of sight from the top of the stairs. I need someone to come get this thing out of my basement as soon as possible. I've locked the door since I can still hear the steps creaking under its weight down there.
Please hold.
Home Safety Hotline was a game that I just really connected with right away. I don't know, maybe it has something to do with what I do for a living, but just the format of, hey, people have problems, and then you need to go over the database of information and try to match up what it is they're saying with the actual information to figure out what their issues are. And maybe the callers are not actually describing things very well, but it's your job to read between the lines and work out what it is they're really saying. Just something about the gameplay of it that really connected well with me. And, of course, there's the supernatural aspect, as when you begin Home Safety Hotline, everything seems rather mundane. All the problems people could have are things like house fires or carbon monoxide, or maybe frozen pipes. But as the day goes on, as the week goes on, and you gain the trust of the Home Safety Hotline, you start getting access to the more classified entries. And then you start finding out about how many homes there are out there that are infected with supernatural entities. I do like that the reference material for that came from, folk tales, the Fey folk, things like that. instead of maybe more commonly used horror material. I think like what you get out of this is going to be as much as you put into it. I can actually absolutely imagine someone bouncing off of this because, hey, what is it? It's reading, and then more reading, and then comparing what the text says. But I think that if you get really into it, if you start treating this like, hey, this is important, I need to get this right. Getting it wrong, unacceptable. Unacceptable. This is not just a game. This person has a problem with a burglar coming in their house and cleaning the living room, and this person's distraught about it. I have to discover what it is that's wrong. And I have to take that responsibility. I have to take it seriously because this person actually has a problem with a common hob. And I need to tell them that they need to leave out a bowl of cream every night for that hob. Otherwise, there is the risk of metamorphosis. And if that happens, they got a bogart. And if that happens, they're just going to have to sell their home, which the Fae apparently are quite eager to buy.
Please.
So they can fix it up and flip it, which I guess is where the real income for the home safety hotline is coming from. So that's how they get you. That's how they get you. How did the common hob get in your house? Did someone put it in there? Hey, who knows? I just work here. I'm not here investigating malfeasance at the home safety hotline. That's not what I do. I'm just here to answer calls and solve problems. Also, the pictures of the animals are very cute. Also, don't kill moles. Moles have close relations with the ones beneath the soil, which causes complications. So you must never kill a mole. Most people don't know that, but now you do, because of the home safety hotline. I also do like the aesthetic, the mid-90s Windows look, the very simple, blocky menus, text, small graphic images with low color depth. It's all very, it's all, very nostalgic. Home Safety Hotline is my number 10 game of 2024, and one that I feel that I did pretty good at. Not to mention that holiday DLC came out for it later on in the year, and that was also real good. The quality of the DLC was as good, if not better, than the main game. Home Safety Hotline is one that I highly recommend if you like reading text, listening to dialogue, and comparing the text for inconsistencies, as well as clues, and figuring out the solutions. This is the best one of these I've played, which are not many. But of them, this is really good.
I'd grab you by the goober and smack you around till next Sunday. Now, what's you gonna do? What's you gonna do to make this right?
This is Watcher providing me with helpful information. This is me forwarding the information to the All-Mother. This is the All-Mother using the information to capture the offending party. This is the offending party confessing their sins. This is them burning for their sins. Again, in more detail. Once more. The end. She's gone? It seems the sins of our ancient sister grow ever more cunning, seeping into even our brightest. As such, I'm issuing a directive. All sisters, beginning with Bang Bang Fire, are to submit to Watcher for a mandatory communion. We must strengthen our bond with the All-Mother in these trying times. We must hold fast and root out the sin. Please join me in thanking Watcher. We never would have caught Fixer without her. Heki Almo, Watcher. You have kept us safe.
What to say about 1000 Times Resist? Because this is really reviewing a story literature, honestly, more than a video game. It's a story that I found very involving, so I guess we'll just talk about what is the beginning premise of the story. You might be able to tell from looking at this. This is a science fiction story taking place in the future, an unspecified amount of years, but it's probably been a very long time. It starts off in a society
Congratulations,
that
Watcher.
What do you want?
where everyone is the same. Literally, they are all clones
Okay.
of one teenage
You
girl.
look faint. Maybe you should.
Because at some point in the past, aliens invaded,
That's great.
and they brought with them a virus that was extremely lethal,
Around.
and everyone in the world died, except this one teenage girl,
Yes.
Iris. Why didn't she die? And maybe you will find out as you continue on in the story.
But I'm sure many.
She's the only one left, but she doesn't want to be alone. So she uses the technology that the dead left behind to clone herself, because where else are more people going to come from? And so the people that she cloned begin to worship Iris as a god figure, because Iris is now ageless. She remains a teenage girl forever, and so do her clones. They are born at, I guess, probably 17 years old is probably what they are, and they never actually age. They can die because they can be killed by the virus, and as such, they wear masks. But Iris, being the god figure All-Mother, does not wear a mask. She is the one person who is immune. She is off somewhere fighting the occupants, the alien army, the unknowable cosmic horrors. And everyone else in this city? Well, since they're living under such hard circumstances, they have developed this very strict, rigid, authoritarian society where everyone has a function and you need to perform to your function to eventually be able to join the All-Mother in her fight against the evil alien hordes. Except the very beginning of the game, you see your character, Watcher, murder the All-Mother. That's the first scene in the game. This character you're seeing, Watcher, takes a knife and stabs her in the back. Uh-oh, Iris, turns out you weren't immortal. You just didn't get any older. But she can still die. And after that, you go back in time, and you then start seeing the progression of events that leads to our Watcher here deciding that Iris has got to go.
A new day has its own.
Because it's a very, very large separation between murdering Iris and what you see Watcher doing at this point in the game, which is believing Iris to be a god figure, believing that you have to do your job to perform your function, and that this is more important than anything in the world. As far as what the gameplay is, it's a walk and talk. You walk around, you talk to people. There is some light puzzle solving, but that doesn't play a very large part in the game.
Together.
The interesting part is that you have basically two different time periods, let's say, where you're walking and talking. One is during the future city part, which you're seeing here. You're talking with your clone sisters,
Watcher.
who all have the same voice, all have the same face,
About
though they do have slightly different personalities. The other time period that you're walking and talking is that you do this thing called the communion, in which you access Iris's memories, which I think have been stored digitally. And so you then experience Iris's memories from our present day, exploring the high school she went to, interacting with other students,
you feel it?
or the apartment that Iris grew up in, talking with her parents. There are two... In the future segments, Watcher and the other people she's talking to all have the same point of view, and all view Iris the same way. In the past segment, Watcher is sort of an outsider, not understanding what it is that these places are, or having trouble understanding Iris living as a real person.
3, 2.
And from there, you start to see the transformation of how Iris eventually goes from being a pretty awful teenage girl to being a pretty awful god figure. You know, it turns out teenagers have a lot of emotional issues.
In case the power goes.
And if those things are not actually
Not planning on coming.
solved, and maybe perhaps that teenager becomes the god figure of the new humanity. Maybe those issues are going to come back later on because they were never dealt with to begin with. And you start learning about things like that.
Sorry.
As far as themes go, look, I'm no literaturist, but if I would say there are themes here, the theme has to do with, well, oppression. I mean, the game is called 1000 Times Resist, and the reason for that is because you see how, in these different time periods, you see how humanity keeps going through the same sort of cycle of some people accumulating and consolidating power, and then oppressing the other people in society, usually with guns, and how, in the end, that eventually will not turn out good for anyone. It's sort of a pessimistic view of the future, maybe, because the idea is even in the far-off future, that cycle keeps continuing, and even when all of humanity is dead, even when all that's left is one teenage girl and her clones, they still go down that same old path. And then in the end, the question is, do you think you can avoid going down that path? It's kind of, I'm sort of talking vaguely about the story because it is a story that I don't think should be spoiled. I think it's an excellent video game story to experience. It's light on gameplay, and with me generally, I really want a game to be strong on gameplay to interact with, to interact and complement with the story. And if this had more in the way of gameplay, this probably would be higher up on the list. As it is, like I said, it's a walk and talk. Light on gameplay, but very good story, very heavy on atmosphere, on the look and the sound. It's very melancholy. There are jokes, there's humor, but it's a very sad tone and mood to it. I also think it had some of my favorite voice acting of the year, which I was kind of surprised about because my favorite voice actor, looking into it, turned out to be an actual child. I was like, oh, all right. Like, I enjoyed that performance more than any of the professional VAs that I heard this year. I would strongly recommend 1000 Times Resist if you are looking for a story, like a capital S story, full of layers and themes and emotions. And I can't really say more about it than that. Other than that, it's my number 9 game of the year. And I don't really want to actually specify more about it than that, because I think you should play it yourself and experience the story that 1000 Times Resist has to offer.
Its function, then?
To be cute.
It's the wrong shape for that.
This plushie was designed to imitate the look of a giant prehistoric fish type. A whale.
A whale?
Yes, they were once queen of the oceans. Its species suffered a devastating collapse, like all subaquatic specimens who were cooked to their demise.
Oh, Astrobot. I played the VR game back on PSVR 1, and that was on my top 10 list at the time. So, the big Astrobot game came out this year. You may have heard of it. It may have won some awards, some game awards, and it does deserve it. It is an excellent game. The 3D platformer collectathon, usually not the genre I'm into, but I very much enjoyed Astrobot. It's just, how would I describe it? I feel like playing Astrobot is like eating your favorite candy. Now, as I get older, I don't eat candy that much anymore, but Astrobot was some really good candy. I feel like it feels like the most polished thing I played this year. It's just everything is very consistent in terms of performance, in terms of frame rate, in terms of environments and the creativity and new game mechanics showing up in each level that maybe only show up for one level and then never again. And you makes you think, wow, you did all that for a single level and that's never going to show up again in the game. It just feels luxurious. It feels tasty and sweet and goes down easy. As far as whether or not it's better than the VR game, yeah, I mean, the VR game had a lot of novelty for me, and the gameplay is very similar. But I feel like this is a very expanded upon, much more polished version of the game, even though actually it does use quite a bit of material from the VR game, which I think a lot of people don't know because not a lot of people play VR games. But the bosses and a number of the music tracks, actually there's quite a bit that's actually from that VR game. And the premise of the VR game was that you were rescuing missing robots as well, so very similar in that respect. Though, of course, those robots were not from other video games, which is, a cute little thing that they had going on in here. Basically, Astrobot being a, hey, remember this when it comes to Sony and the PlayStation in general. Remember those games that you like? Well, I mean, we're gonna make reference to them, just like as a fun little collectible thing. I feel like everything about the game felt, again, like your favorite candy. It controlled exceptionally well. Performance was constant. Well, if you played Astro's Playroom, you might understand that it's a game that really tries to make use of every aspect of the PS5's hardware. It's a game that's meant for this system and nothing else. Much like Astrobot VR was meant for the PSVR and was never actually ported to PSVR 2, which is still weird. Sony, what are you doing? Sony, why didn't you port that game? I don't understand that. Well, that's not really here or there when it comes to this game. Astrobot, exceptionally fun game. Again, I don't usually go for the 3D platformers that are in this style, but excellent game, exceptional. I definitely deserves the awards that it's gotten. Also, it's probably my favorite soundtrack of the year. The composer, I believe his name is Kenneth Young. I don't think I've heard him do anything else aside from Astrobot VR. But I really like the music to this game. The soundscape. The visuals. Oh yeah, and like when you get like a whole bunch of little things like acorns here. This game, I don't really know what you would call it. This game does this really satisfying thing where tons of stuff appears on the screen, and then you can run through them and they go everywhere like that. I don't know if there's a name for that. I think this game does that really well. In this particular level you're seeing here, the whole theme is that you're climbing a living tree, and you have to solve a problem for it. And the tree very ominously says, you know what you've got to do. And what you've got to do is kill these 3 baby birds. Well, maybe they survive. It looks like they fly out of there. Still, we got to do this favor to the tree. And you don't have another level like this in the game. Like I said, it's a game where a lot of different levels do a lot of different things. There's a lot of uniqueness. They had a lot of time to just put a lot of apples. Look at all these apples. You can run through. I don't know why this is satisfying. I don't know why it's satisfying when they put a whole bunch of stuff on the screen, then you can run through it like that. Yeah, there's such variety in this. So I did play this through this whole thing, got all of the robots, then played the first DLC, got all of the robots. Haven't played the latest DLC that came out, because I have moved on to other things, but game is excellent while it lasted. Also, I feel like there was a discussion when this game came out about how it's a cynical game because they see all of the robots from different PlayStation games as being like a graveyard. I don't see it that way. It's fine for games to not come back, Not everything has to last forever. It's fine for something to just end, and then you move on to something new. And then you have, like, something that reminds you of it, like, haha, look at that robot that's dressed like Chris Redfield. Not everything has to come back. I mean, if you want something that will last forever and refuses to end, hey, there's something for you. It's called the MCU. I don't see many people talking very positively about that these days. There's Lara Croft getting assaulted by a raptor. Anyway, it's Astrobot. Excellent game. Cute game. It did compel me to collect all of the little robots and their accessories. So you can hit them, and then they'll like do a little animation. There's Raziel being very ominous. There's Kane. There's a Shibito, the gardener. I would have liked Kiyoya, but no, it doesn't have that. I think that character's name is Fortescue. I have not played the game he's from. There's Arthur. Oh, and look who it is. Hey, this guy came back this year. Remember him? You want these games to come back? He came back this year. There's Richter. And there's Alcon. Yeah, I mean, when you're on the base planet like this, a lot of it is, haha, look at him. He's here. I'm gonna hit him. He's gonna do something. Yeah, it's shallow. I know. But it's fun. And it's just a very fun game. Like I said, very much, it's jumping, like, they thought of Jumping Flash. Who thinks of Jumping Flash? I got an achievement for getting stuck on that. On the Katamari. Yeah, not much else to say about Astrobot. Excellent game. Very cute. Very fun. Made me want to collect everything and complete all the levels, which I did. And if you have nostalgia for old PlayStation stuff, they do a lot here to try to satisfy that. Nine Souls came out this year. Not a surprise because a demo had come out in a previous year, but still somewhat of a surprise because this is the newest game by Red Candle, the makers of Devotion and Detention. And considering their catalog of being, you know, morose horror games, this was definitely a change in, well, everything, in tone, in genre, of game mechanics from what they have done before. Basically, it is a combat, parry-heavy Metroidvania, and it is excellent. I enjoyed playing this all the way through. It controls wonderfully, combat's great, wonderful look and sound, and once again, just very surprising that this is coming from the studio that last we saw them had made Devotion. Because a lot of studios will get, you know, a lot of indie studios will generally kind of stick with what they like, with maybe a narrow focus on the types of games they're making to capitalize on the things they made before that may be popular. Like if a studio's making horror games, maybe they'll keep making horror games. Or if that indie studio made a really successful RPG, maybe they might make another one. Red Candle says no, they've got more in the tank. They've got surprises for you. And Nine Souls does not feel like a game that was made as a first attempt at a genre, if that sentence is constructed correctly. Maybe it's not. This feels like a game that was made by a studio that already made a game like this, because it feels exceptionally good and polished. Also, another thing it is really hard. This is the hardest game I've played in some years. Much more of a challenge than I usually would expect from this genre. And actually, okay, so this game has 2 difficulty levels. There's normal, and there's story. There's no hard. Normal is just the difficulty if you want to play it the way the developers want you to play it. And story is a lot easier. I played through this game on normal up until a little over the halfway point. And then I realized, if I don't turn this down to story, I am not going to have enough time to finish this. Because on normal difficulty, this is one of the hardest games I've played in a very long time. It makes you work for every inch of progress that you make. So I did have to turn it down to story in order to get through the rest of it. And I feel kind of bad about that because I like this game a lot, and I would have really liked to have enough time to try to get through it until normal. Try to get through it on normal. But that time just didn't exist. Fortunately, though, after you beat the game, you do get a boss rush mode if you want to retry the bosses on normal difficulty, so that is another option for you. I found this game to be very compelling, very charming. However, don't let the bright colors, the cute character designs, and lighthearted moments fool you. This is a game by Red Candle, and this story gets pretty bleak, as you might expect from this studio. The way it looks may make you think otherwise. But no. Red Candle is doing their thing, in terms of story. It's just that they're doing a completely new thing in terms of the gameplay. But I really liked the combination of story and gameplay. I liked how the story went to some darker areas. I like the manga presentation they have for some of the scenes, like we're seeing here. I think the manga-style art is really good when it shows up. What's the story of Nine Souls? Well, you have this short little swordsman who is a cat. He starts off in a village. The village look like human beings, but he is a cat person. You discover that the humans in this village worship the cat people as gods. And also, that apparently the people have a ritual, a carnival, where they end up sacrificing themselves to the cat gods, though the people may not be aware that they are actually killing themselves to do so. Our character, our little cat swordsman, interrupts the ritual, and then heads into the base where the cat gods are, with the goal of wrecking shit. Why does he want to wreck shit is unclear at first. You wonder if it has to do with revenge, but you know that there is some sort of history between your cat swordsman and the rest of what's going on. And that is a story that unfolds over the course of the game, and you don't get the full story of it until just about at the very end, when you start to really understand why our cat swordsman wants to wreck stuff up. I enjoyed the characters, enjoyed the story. I liked how things unfolded. As I said, I really enjoyed playing the game. This was, of the top 10, this was the last game that I completed, which was earlier this month, in the month of December. And I would have liked to have had the time to have actually done it all on normal, but that just wasn't going to happen. And if this game seems interesting to you, I would just warn you of that part, of the surprising difficulty, and that if it feels like it is too much, do remember that there is the story mode where you can turn things down, and story mode turns it into a regular video game, as opposed to the grueling parry gauntlet that it is on normal. I should also mention that. Do you like games with parries? I hope so, because this game is very parry-centric. You will be hitting that parry button repeatedly and constantly, and you got to get the timing perfect. And different kinds of parries. There are 3 parries, and some fights that do require you to mix up the parries. So if you don't like parries, you will not like Nine Souls, because the developers obviously love the hell out of parries. That's something to keep in mind if this game looks of interest to you. I liked it a lot. I liked the challenge, though in the end I did not have enough time to meet the challenge head on. But I strongly recommend this game if you like the look of it, if you like Metroidvanias, if you like combat with parries as the focus. Nine Souls is an excellent new game, and makes me excited to see the future of what Red Candle has to offer, seeing how they've made an all-time great horror game in Devotion, and have now made what I consider to be an all-time great combat-focused Metroidvania in Nine Souls. And that's why it's my number 7 for this year. Previously to the release of Lorelei and the Laser Eyes, the only game I'd played from Simogo was Sayonara Wild Hearts, which I liked quite a bit and was on my top 10 list that year. Something that's on my top 10 list this year is their new game, Lorelei and the Laser Eyes. I was very interested in this because of, well, Simogo's pedigree, and also because the trailer looked like some... I did not know what kind of game this was going to be. It looked pretty surreal, and it is. Turned out what the game is some hardcore puzzle action. I'm talking you find some locks. There don't seem to be any clues around. What's the combination? Hey, you figure it out. You figure it out. It's all about exploring a mansion. A very strange mansion. There are many locks. There are clues to the locks. Who knows if those clues are anywhere close to where the actual locks are? This is a notebook game. Fortunately, the game itself also has a very well-working, comprehensive notebook that keeps track of the things that you learn. But in addition to that, you should probably also keep a paper notebook next to you to make notes of the things that you're learning and the things that are still questions and the locations of the things that you haven't figured out. Because this is all puzzles all the time. That's the gameplay. Explore a house, find some puzzles, try to solve those puzzles. Maybe you don't have the clues to solve those puzzles. Maybe you won't have them for like 10 hours. That's fine. Go somewhere else. Try to solve some more puzzles. Usually number-based puzzles. It's a game where there are some years that are relevant, and a number of the puzzles have to do with those years. 4-digit numbers. Is there a story? Yes. It's up to you to decipher the story. That's a puzzle, too. Look, it's a puzzle game. The story itself could also be a puzzle. And it certainly is in Lorelei and the Laser Eyes. You don't know too much in the opening. You just know that you are someone, this lady, who has come to this hotel from the invitation of someone named Renzo Nero. And there's a black dog. The dog is very cute. Why are you here? That's something for you to figure out. What are you even supposed to be doing? Is for you to figure out. It's a game that starts you with nothing, no knowledge at all, and everything you get after that, be it story, be it about characters, be it about puzzles, are clues that you need to collect. And I think this is a very well-designed game. Like, a puzzle game really has to be. Especially when it's the sort of game where Like, just everything about the game are interlocking puzzles. It really kind of has to be immaculately designed, and I feel that Lorelei is. And it's complemented with the style. Very strong visual and audio style. When I first saw it, I wondered, is Samogo making a Killer 7? Because this kind of looks like a Killer 7. It's not. It kind of looks like it, but no, it's not. It's something very different. And I'm glad it's not a Killer 7. I'm glad that it is the game that they made, because I do feel this is one of the more memorable puzzle games that I have played. You're in a mansion, a hotel, with a movie director. It seems like you are doing some kind of job for this movie director. But even what that is a puzzle to figure out. It's kind of hard to say anything more about Lorelei and the Laser Eyes, because you wouldn't want to say what the story turns out to be, as that's something for you to figure out. It's also not really... I wouldn't really want to relate any individual puzzles, because, once again, those are for you to figure out. You have a tampon in your inventory. I can tell you that. You can try to use it on things. Does it ever work? That is for you to figure out. You're in a mansion of puzzles, working for some strange movie director, and everything from there is just for you to figure out. Write it down in your notebook. Try to figure out clues. Remember the important years. Try to figure out what clues relate to which puzzles. And figure out what this guy wants. What does he want you to do? Why did he call you here? What is the job? Also, you can get dollars. What do you spend the dollars on? There's a gacha machine. You can buy, like, capsule toys. Is that a good use of your dollars? That's for you to figure out. He has to clean off this red paint. Or that's what he says. Is he telling the truth? That's for you to figure out. We must uncover everything. I did. Actually, I think there were only like two story like it gives you story it gives you results at the end of the game. I think that there were only like two bits of story that I did not get. I know how I would get them. I just but I didn't actually go back to do it. But I got almost 100% completion of the game. I found this to be a very compelling game in terms of the atmosphere, in terms of the puzzles, in terms of the story. And you know, I didn't actually have an ending to that sentence. There's a lot of reading, a lot of text, a lot of reading to figure out what the clues even are. It's a quiet game. It's a slow, methodical, quiet game. Not exactly a party game. A game that maybe you would play when you have some time to yourself, when everything around you is quiet, when you have time to think. Maybe that's what Lorelei and the Laser Eyes is for. As I said, it's one of the more memorable puzzle games I've played. And if you like puzzles at all, and style, because this game's very stylish, then I highly recommend this. Though if you don't like puzzles, man, there's nothing here for you. There's nothing here for you if that's the case. But if you do like puzzles, I do think that this is an extremely good one. This has been Lorelei and the Laser Eyes. It's number 6 for my games of 2024.
wall, keeping us safe and secure. I could gaze at it all day. Excuse me. That was my barricade you just destroyed. Oh, come to admire the Bailey? It is something. Or maybe you're here to get your ass handed to you in a QB match. I'm Zahira. A pleasure. Just like Calm's wall, I yield to no one, refusing to give a single inch to my opponents. Don't presume you'll emerge unscathed if you decide to go up against me. Because you will wind up with more than just a few bruises.
FF7 Rebirth, a game some years in the waiting since, well, Remake came out a few years past. It was my number one game that year. Rebirth is an interesting case. It's a game I'm more conflicted about than anything else on this list. Because in some ways, Rebirth would be my number one game, and then in other ways, it would be my number 10 game. So, number 5 seems like where it's ending up. Because Rebirth is a massive game. It's a game oozing out the pores with content. So much content. So much packed into a single game. For better and for worse, there are some things about Rebirth I like a lot. Like, say, what we're looking at right here, Queen's Blood. There is this card... They hid a season of Yu-Gi-Oh! In Final Fantasy VII. I didn't see that coming, and I enjoyed it quite a lot. And FF7 Rebirth does have things like that. I didn't think this was going to be in this game, and I'm enjoying what it's doing here. And there are aspects of it I don't like. I think I really when I say I don't like, I think I really have to come to terms that I just don't like the style of storytelling that Square does in their modern games. I think that's just all it is. I enjoyed the gameplay. Combat's very good. I enjoyed exploring most of the area. There's some maps in this game I did not like exploring very much. There are some areas that I liked exploring quite a bit. I liked going through all of Queen's Blood. I liked defeating all of the opponents and seeing where that Yu-Gi-Oh!-ish story went, as Cloud became the king of games.
Deep down,
Some chapters I enjoyed a lot, other chapters I did not enjoy so much.
here forever.
I feel this game must have one of the best soundtracks in a video game.
Eventually crumble.
Just period.
Starting today,
And yet,
you will
I don't like how they're telling this story.
I am going to enjoy.
I feel like people were wondering if the story would be the same from the original or if it would be different. I would have been fine either way. I just don't like how they're telling it. I don't like the cutscenes. I don't like the direction. It's just not something I'm into at all. There's so much about the game that's really good, and yet, and yet, and yet. And when I'm thinking about that, I'm kind of thinking about, well, the ending of this game ends, let's not get into spoilers now, but the ending ends where you think it's gonna end. It ends with the big Aerith scene, which of course is one of the most famous cutscenes in video games. And you're wondering the whole time you're going there, how are they gonna do this? How are they gonna do this scene? Are they gonna change anything? What's gonna happen? And I was very disappointed in how they did it. I thought the cutscenes were bad. I thought the fight was bloated. I thought that they were extremely wishy-washy on what actually happens, without really getting into details about that. I was like, wow, I can't believe how much I didn't like how they handled this. And just like the cutscenes in general are like that, or like the pacing of things, such as the scene, or, another example is the scene with Dyne and Barrett, which is a very, morose, touching scene that they follow up with this big wild roller coaster of a fight with complete tonal whiplash. don't have to do something like that, but it's more like they feel, if it seems like they felt like they had to shove and stuff as much as possible in every single aspect of the game. Now, it's funny when you generally, if someone says that the game's too much, it's too big, someone else might say you don't have to do the side stuff. You can just do the main stuff. I feel the side stuff is some of the stronger material. I feel like I enjoy the side stuff more often than the main quest stuff. Especially when you had side quests where you had, the characters interacting, your party members talking. There's a lot of good character stuff there that you would not get if you don't do the side stuff. So there's plenty of side stuff that is absolutely worth doing. There's just like some important elements that about how they decide to tell this story, and just how much they decide they need to shove into every orifice and pore in terms of content, that I'm wondering. I don't know if this had to be done this way. I don't think doing it this way is better than the downright concise way it was done in the original game. Now, if you like everything it's doing, this is probably one of the best games ever made, because it's a game that doesn't really get made. It's... You all remember the old complaint that HD towns are hard to make from the FF13 days. Well, this is sort of the counter-argument to that, of we are going to make so much HD towns, so many HD environments, you will not believe just how HD environmental this game is getting. This is sort of that argument of, yeah, we can actually do it. And I appreciate that. I don't think this is doing the story of FF7 any favors, I feel. It's kind of hard to get into what I mean without getting into heavy spoilers about the way they handle certain things. But I also feel, like I said, the pacing is awful in some cases. Like, say, the scene where Cloud, Yuffie are at the reactor, and Cloud is maybe starting to remember something, and then the game cuts to Kate Sith throwing boxes in the Shinra mansion? How dare you? How dare you make me play this? Go back to Cloud right now. I don't know. It's like in some elements of this game, Square displays complete mastery of every element of game making. And then in other parts, they throw all of that out the window. It is a baffling, strange combination that I don't think I've seen in a video game quite like this before. And that's why I say that in some ways, this is my #1 game of the year. In other ways, it is my number 10 game of the year. And due to that whiplash, we're putting it down at number 5. FF7 Rebirth. I'm looking forward to the third and final game. I'm very mixed about the second. Holy shit. Resident Evil 4 Remake did come out in 2023. I did play it then, but this year it got a VR mode. And it basically turns it into a different kind of game entirely. So, for the third time, Resident Evil 4 appears on the top 10 list. It was first the original VR port, then RE4 Remake, now RE4 Remake VR. Man. I feel like this just... I wouldn't say it feels like this is how RE4 should be played, because the regular remake is excellent as well, but it was extremely fun going through RE4 Remake VR with the stuff that lets you do. I mentioned during the playthrough that when you're making a VR port of an existing game, a choice the developers have to make is, should you adhere to the balance, the gameplay balance of the original, Or should you just let the player engage in some VR hijinks? And I think VR hijinks is always the way to go. So what if you can't slash up enemies with knives akimbo in the original? There's no reason you can't do it in VR, and so here it is in VR. This was, in terms of just how fun is a game, I feel like this was the most pure fun I've had with a video game this year. It's hard to say new things about RE4 because we all know RE4. We all know what the deal is. We know who Leon S. Kennedy is. We know what his mission is, going to an unnamed countryside in Europe. Who knows where it is? To rescue the president's daughter. Except this time you can now put on the headset, you can now get in the first person, and now you can pretend that you are Agent Leon S. Kennedy, very serious agent man, who is now just cutting everyone up knives akimbo. But certainly a VR port can turn out to be not so good. There have been not so good ports of good regular games, because getting the gameplay down in VR is very different. It has a lot to do with how well are you able to achieve the sense of moving your arms in real life and your arms in the game doing something satisfying. The feeling of, I like doing these motions, it gives me good feelings. The chemicals in my brain are giving me the good feelings when I move my arms like this, and then this thing happens in the game, or when I reload the gun. I mean, in real life, my hands are just holding controllers and, like, motioning and pressing buttons, but in the game, I'm ejecting out the magazine from the gun and pulling one out from my belt and slamming it in, and then pulling on the slide. And it could be difficult to do that well, to make that have the good feeling. And I feel like Capcom did an exceptional job with RE4 Remake VR giving you the good feeling. And it's just in a completely different way than playing the game normally. Which is why it's on the list, because playing it in VR is a completely different experience. The game looks great, and one's great on the PS5. Have not tried. I don't know if this is any better on the PS5 Pro, but was excellent on the base PS5. Of course, when it comes to how many high-budget, polished VR games are you going to be getting on the PSVR 2, well, I mean, that is another question. Certainly a game like RE4 Remake VR is the exception and not the norm. When it comes to this year, just thinking about it, the VR games I've played, I have not played as many games as I wanted to get to. There are certainly ones that I had my eye on, but just did not have the time for one reason or another. But as far as VR games go, I think that this is an excellent, just really fun experience, just a complete blast to play. That if you have the chance to play this, if you have the chance to put on a PSVR 2 and get this game going, I highly recommend it, because I think you will have a great time with it. Actually, I kind of like seeing people who haven't played many VR games play a game like this, in which the combat can seem quite overwhelming. Fun to see reactions like that from people. Not just horror games in general, but RE4 in particular, considering how intense the combat can be. As far as will there be any more Resident Evil VR ports, there's one I haven't played for Village, but aside from that, there are some fan mods for the PC remakes, but as far as official VR ports from Capcom, I don't know. I don't know if there will be. So, this might not... Actually, they still have not ported 7 to PSVR 2. That's the one that really annoys me. That 7 got a VR port for PSVR 1, and they have just never ported that to anything else. Look, no one wants to use PSVR 1 anymore. No one wants to do that, Capcom. Just port it to PSVR 2. Just do that, and so you can use the actual real VR controllers. Just do it. Please do it. And they haven't done it. But they did it with Village. They did it with 4VR. 4 Remake. And, like I said, excellent game. Excellent VR port. I highly doubt, we'll see me playing RE4 again, because I don't see what else there could be coming from RE4's direction, but this is probably the end of it. And I think that it was just really good while it lasted. Again, if you have the chance to put on a PSVR 2 headset, this is a must-play game. Had a blast all the way through. Get 2 knives. You know what they say. You can't. A man is never as happy as when he has 2 knives. That's not how the Simpsons quote goes. It's not how it goes. I don't remember. It's something like that. Cut to Mo holding 2 knives. Yeah, of course Balatro's here. Of course it is. Of course it is. How could it not be here? Balatro is basically the platonic ideal of a video game in 2024. It is a game that you can play anywhere at any time, whether or not you're paying attention to it, or maybe not paying attention to it. Second screen content, or first screen content, or phone screen content. Maybe you're watching a stream or a video while you're playing Balatro. Are you playing Balatro right now? I see you. Well, I forgive you if you are, if you're not paying entire attention to me, because Balatro is the thing capturing that attention. A lot of people are playing this video game right now. A lot of people playing it next year as well. I'm predicting the future. A lot of people, maybe even more people, playing it next year. If you have not seen it, if you have not put your hands on the digital addiction that is Balatro, it is a puzzle game that looks like poker. People say, are you playing poker? Do you need to know how to play poker? And the answer is no. It is a puzzle game that just kind of looks like poker. Sure, it could be helpful to know what the hands of poker are. That's relevant. But really it just uses the appearance of poker and playing cards for a completely different kind of puzzle game. It is a game about getting your score up. You got to get your chips, you got to get your mult, and then those combine to give you your total score for the round. You can get jokers, which do various things, have various effects on the cards you're using. In the instance of what you're seeing here, the jokers I have right now going from left to right, well, there's Arrowhead, and what that does is every time I play a spade, it gives me 50 chips. There's Abstract Joker, which gives me +3 mult for every joker I have, so that would be giving me +15 mult, since I have 5 jokers at the moment. There's Spare Trousers, which it gives you +2 mult every time you play 2 pair, so it potentially you could just make that go up as high as you want. And Spare Trousers has a polychrome finish, which then gives it a times 1.5 multiplier on that. After that is Acrobat. Acrobat is on your last hand of the ante, it'll give you a ×3 multiplier. Acrobat here also has a foil cover, so that gives me +50 chips. And then there's Canio, which will give me a multiplier every time. I think it's every time I destroy a king. Right now he's on ×2. There are many, many, many jokers. Which ones you get are random. Unless you go for a seeded run, and you know what's going to happen in that seed. But if you're playing seedless, then it's all going to be random. And a big part of the game is seeing what combination of jokers you get, and what you could possibly do to make them work together. What moves should you make? What should you sell? What should you keep? What kind of hands should you try to power up by buying planet cards. The goal is to eventually try to get to the end of Ante 8, in which you technically win. But you can go past Ante 8 into endless mode if you just want to see just how far you can go, though unless you can get a hand that's high enough to break the in-game counter, well, eventually you're just going to lose. Because it will eventually go up to, well, not infinity, but above what the game can actually count up to. So what that means is that in Balatro, there is no winning, there is no victory, there is no point where the game ends and you move on. You stay with Balatro. You stay with it. It has you in its clutches. And you're happy about that. You're happy that it has you. You want it to have you. So you can forever keep opening up Balatro, get the jokers, watch your numbers go up. How high will the numbers go up this time? If they didn't go up high enough, you can always just start up another game. The games are short. They're not that long. Hey, how long have you been playing? An hour? That really isn't that long, is it? You could go for another. Maybe the numbers will go up higher this time. I mean, how can I say no? How could I say no to that? Balatro is not my number one game of the year, but it is the game that I have put more hours to than anything else this year. Pretty sure my Steam counter is now at over 400 hours. I think. Pretty sure. And at this point, I have 1 gold stake on all decks, which is the Completionist Plus achievement. The last thing would be Completionist Plus Plus, I believe, which is getting a gold sticker on every single Joker, which is madness. Who would possibly try to do that? Who would possibly try put in that much time to try to win gold stake with every single Joker? No one would do that. That's a lot of time. No one. But it's only a little bit of time each time. You can spare that much time. You can spare that little bit of time. It's not that long. This time. And maybe the numbers will go higher than they were before. And doesn't that feel good? Yeah. Yeah, it feels very good. So, Balatro is my number 3 game of the year. It's the most I've played a game this year. But while this makes me consistently feel good, it's not the game that has had the highest highs for me, though it has been the most consistent of anything I've played. As for whether or not I recommend it to you, that really all depends on how much you value your time. I can't answer that one for you. I can't do it. But for me, I think about the 400 hours I could have been doing something else instead of Balatro, and I think, So, I've never played a Persona game all the way through. Really, the extent of it was a couple years back, I started trying out Persona 1 PSP version. Bounced off of it after a bit. But earlier this year, pretty early on, Persona 3 Reload came out, and people always said how good Persona 3 was. And I thought, hey, new version of it, quality of life improvements, hey, let's give it a try. And I found that I enjoyed it quite a lot. It was interesting. Sometimes I talk about pacing in a game. I feel like this game kind of had perfect pacing where I would just unknowingly end up playing hours on end, going through day after day after day of the in-game calendar, just like a really smooth drink. Just trying to think of the metaphor there, and I'm not coming up with one. Just something that I was just similar to Balatro, that I was able to just play for very long stretches, long periods of time, and not get tired. I don't know if the original was like that. I've heard in some cases that the original adheres more to the sort of rougher Shin Megami Tensei roots of the Persona series, and maybe the remake has been made friendlier in that respect. I don't know, since I have not played original P3 myself. So all I can speak about is this one. And all I could say is that I liked it a lot, played through the whole game, and then played through Episode Igus, which is what you're seeing here. I did not think Episode Igus was as good as the main game, since that removes a lot of the social life simulator aspects and just focuses more on dungeon combat.
Wanna check that desk?
So that part wasn't as good, but the base game was extremely good. Played it for long sessions, had a really good time, got into the story, enjoyed the characters. I thought the dungeon combat and the life simulator had a really good balance.
Detective, you've got the upper hand. Keep it together.
And figuring out the combat, figuring out the weaknesses, and realizing that, hey, buffs and debuffs in this game are very effective. Kinda, with older RPGs, kinda got trained into feeling like those were not very good, but like in this game, you're using them all the time. Lengthy game. Like, I think by the time I finished it, the base game, I was at like 110 hours before moving on to the DLC. So, not a short time investment. And I think I'm trying to get across that I felt it was remarkable about how, despite how long the game is, it just never felt that way. I felt like it all went very smoothly. Hours and hours would pass by, and I was totally engaged with what was happening here. I enjoyed the life sim aspects. I did not want to look up a walkthrough as to what the correct choices were. Reading people's opinions about the game, I did see a lot of people who wanted to do that because it's such a long game, and I felt, man, that feels sad. Because a big part of the gameplay in this game has to do with what choices you make in your daily life. That's as much of the gameplay as any of the fighting in the dungeons. And so saying that you want to look at a walkthrough to see what the right choices are, that's basically eliminating most of the game, just for the sake of having everything at the end. You know, if you make your own choices based on what things are important to you, hey, maybe you mess up, maybe you make mistakes, but that's also fun. In my case, a mistake I realized was, oh no, I didn't finish the MMO social link as fast as I should have, and now someone else who only appears in the weekends is here during the day? On Sunday, I think it was. Now I have to choose which one? I should have done the MMO first. How foolish I am. It was too late. It was too late. I had to choose one, so I went with the MMO social link. I just didn't have enough time for the other person.
But just knowing something
Sad,
necessarily makes
but
it
true.
easy to act on.
But it's mistakes like that that's just as much of the gameplay as any of the fighting, any of the weapon equipping or level upping, or choosing what skills you want on your persona. And I don't know, just the idea of deciding you want to skip all that just is very strange to me, because that's skipping a lot of the game itself. I had a really good time with Persona 3. I had a really good time with the story and these characters, and the tragic, melancholy direction that the story goes in. I felt like I said, I felt like the DLC not as good, and I didn't necessarily feel like the things it answers actually needed answers. It was still worthwhile to play the DLC, because I like Aegis. You know, I liked following the story where she's the main character now. I am interested to know if Persona 4 might get a remake. I mean, probably Golden is still pretty good, I'm sure. But I think that this remake came out really well, and I'm curious to know if they have any other intentions of doing remakes. Like, would they actually remake 1 or 2? My understanding is that those games are quite different from 3, 4, or 5. So I don't know what their plans are. But I hope Reload did well enough that they might consider doing that. Persona 3? Hours went by like minutes. Enjoyed the whole thing. And like I said, completely engaged from beginning to end with this anime story about we're going to school. Oh no, shadow monsters. Wait, I have superpowers. Hey, we made friends with a robot? You know, high school stuff.
Rajin, I know now. I saw everything. We can leave this place. Leave it all behind.
The stray dog seeks affection. You are pathetic, Sargon. First, I will take those powers from you. Then, I will lacerate your flesh into 1,000,000 pieces. The Nosh will lay eggs in your carcass and devour the rest.
We'll see.
This year, Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown came out, and later in the year, the development team was shut down. So that's a little of a downer point to start this out on, as I do think this was the best game of the year. I played it when it came out, which was maybe January. Had to go back to it later on when the DLC came out that added the fight against Rajin that you're seeing here, just to remind myself, was it as good as I remembered? Or now, these months later, after playing some other things, would I have different opinions? No, my opinion did not change. This was still extremely good. So most of what you're seeing here is a one-on-one fight. And the boss fights in Lost Crown are definitely a highlight, as this is a Metroidvania that also takes a lot from character action. And I said something like that when I was talking about Nine Souls. I do feel that Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown feels better. Just extremely good game feel, which is kind of hard to describe, but I feel like just in terms of pressing buttons and the response of Sargon on the screen doing something felt better than anything else that I played this year. Which is good because the boss fights, are very demanding. Very challenging boss fights. Most of the game is not like that, as most of the game is more, you might consider a traditional Metroidvania exploration type of game, until you get to the bosses, which are very much character action-ish set pieces, which I enjoyed playing a whole lot. I'm trying to think about, this might have taken the place of my favorite Metroidvania. I don't know if I want to say that. Previous to this, it probably would have been Symphony of the Night, and it might be this now. It might be this, though I think time will tell. Time will answer that question, because you need more time to say something like that, right? This only came out this year. We'll see if I feel like the appeal of it ends up being as timeless as something like Symphony of the Night. All I could say is that as of this year goes, I am very high on Prince of Persia. I had the best time of anything playing it this year. I think the platforming, the movement, the jumping, the air dashing, the abilities all feel exceptionally good. Tremendous map, tremendous game world to explore. It does, even though this sort of game is pretty different from the original Prince of Persia, they also try to keep certain elements that you associate with Prince of Persia, such as avoiding spikes or pendulums or like little, sections where acrobatics are necessary to avoid stage hazards, pits and such. You can see it. You can see how they're trying to take elements that Prince of Persia is known for and putting it into something new that Prince of Persia has not done before. And I think they do a really good job of it. The story, also fairly different from what you would expect, is you are not playing as the Prince of Persia. Frequently, well, the traditional Prince of Persia was you were as the prince and you were saving the princess. In this one, you are Sargon, a member of an elite group of troops called the Immortals. And you are trying to save the Prince of Persia, who has been kidnapped for, well, some reason. You don't know why yet, but the reasons will come up later as you play the game, as the story unfolds. I enjoyed the cast of characters here. Your teammates of the Immortals, who are all basic, all of them seem to be superpowered. They say they're just really good swordsmen, but at the same time, it's like, no, they're just like superpowered. They're all just like mutants. And then, as the game goes on, you may have to fight your allies, your immortal allies, as the game goes on. For reasons. And I think the game does a really good job of setting up these boss fights and having these really intense confrontations whenever any of the Immortals shows up. I just had a really good time playing this from beginning to end, exploring the world, getting, well, just about 100% of the map. And maybe there's like little pieces here and there that I ended up not getting. But for the most part, I did all of the map, all of the challenges, like the parts where it says, here's a really hard acrobatic challenge. Can you do it? And yes, we're going to do this. Because, like I said, the movement, the platforming, the jumping is all really fun and feels really good.
Others remain fixed.
I was not sure what else to say about Prince of Persia, The Lost Crown, other than if you're into Metroidvanias, if you're into combat-heavy Metroidvanias with sword fighting and abilities, I can't really recommend anything higher than this game, which is why it's a shame that the development team is no longer around. Before they were disbanded, they did have the time to release a DLC in which they added in a boss that they did not have time to add in before the game first came out. So it's good that they were able to do that. It's good that they were able to actually complete the game before going away.
Don't forget.
Ubisoft.
I promise I won't.
I never really play Ubisoft games. They don't release much that appeals to me, so pretty kind of a surprise that an Ubisoft game is number one on my list this year. And at the same time, I guess not so much of a surprise as that the team that made the game is not going to be making more of the... Ubisoft. They're a company with problems. They got their problems. But in the year 2024, at the very least, they did release one exceptional game. Prince of Persia, The Lost Crown. I don't know if there's a reason to ever expect anything like this from Ubisoft or the Prince of Persia IP again. But the game that did release is my number one of the year. And so that's it for the 2024 games. There they are. The list of 10 games: Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown, Persona 3 Reload, Balatro, Resident Evil 4 Remake VR, Final Fantasy 7 Rebirth, Lorelei and the Laser Eyes, Nine Souls, Astrobot, 1000 Times Resist, and Home Safety Hotline. And like I said, there were a bunch of games that I played that in other years might have made it on the list, but this was a really good year for me. So I like Slitterhead, I like Mouthwashing, those that just did not get on this list. Alone in the Dark, that came out. That's another game where the development team is not going to be doing anything. Yeah, there were some games that I was wondering, what's not gonna make it this year? And then there are some VR games that I wanted to get to, but just didn't get around to. But maybe those might show up next year. Assuming, that video games will still be around next year. I mean, they probably will. They probably will. We'll have video games, despite what might be happening outside the window, inside the window, in your room. Will be video games. All right, Echostasis was another one that I played this year that just didn't get onto the list. I liked it, but not here. Bunch of games that just didn't get there. But I hope that you got there for whatever you were trying to get to in 2024. That's a sentence. That's absolutely a sentence. 2024. Catch it. Well, actually, not anymore. 2025. Bird flu. Don't catch it. You might catch it. The way things are going. But, hey, stay inside and play video games and maybe you won't. It's better inside. It's better inside. And, that's another year down. Another year in front of us, continuing to stream games. What games? We'll find out next month as we enter January. But for right now, that's like a day or two even from now. For now is about saying goodbye to 2024. I hope you had a good 2024. And I hope you have a good start to 2025. I'll be streaming the same schedule that I have been. Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays. At 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Twitch.tv/supergreatfriend. There's no D because one consistent from year after year is that we do not want the attraction of Dracula. The attention. I also do not want to be attracted to Dracula. Because that happens in the book. It doesn't end up well. Do not be attracted to Dracula. Things are not going to go... It's going to go badly. We have a novel about this. I hope you have a good end of the year and a good start of the next one. This has been 10 games that I've enjoyed in 2024.
Answer the phone, you bastards. I just found out about the tape. That was our only copy. The happiest day of my life, and you wiped over it. I'm not letting this slip.
Are you taping again? Come on.
Action. Come on then, girls. Introduce yourselves.
I'm Michelle, and I'm Midwich High's prom queen.
And our next star?
I'm Lisa. I'm a nurse.
And I'm Harry Mason, famous author and seducer of prom queens and nurses.
Can we be in your next book?
Sure.
Can you dedicate it to us?
No, dedications are always to my wife and daughter. It's only fair.